Welcome, everyone, to The Deep Dive. This is where we take a whole bunch of interesting articles, some really fascinating research, and, our own experiences, and try to boil it all down into something useful, something actionable that hopefully really connects with you. And today, we're jumping into a topic that, well, if you're anything like me, or honestly, most people I talk to has probably hit a bit of raw nerve at some point, we're talking about why hustle culture is making you poorer, not richer money mistakes 20s. So, just picture this for a second. It's late, maybe 1 a.m., and your phone buzzes. It's a work email, or, it's Saturday afternoon, you're trying to relax, and ping, a work message pops up, and you feel it, right? That's that familiar little pang of guilt. That voice, sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it feels like a shout coming from everywhere, society, social media, even inside our own heads. It tells you that if you're not constantly hustling, if you're not switched on 24/7, you're not just falling behind, you're actually, losing ground. Rest becomes this luxury you can't afford.
And the only way to get ahead, financially or otherwise, is just to work harder, faster, longer, always more. That feeling of just being constantly overwhelmed, like you're stuck on a treadmill that just won't stop. But you also feel this invisible push to keep running. We've sort of all been trained to think this relentless chase is the only way. It's exhausting just thinking about it, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Exhausting is definitely the word. And you've really put your finger on that feeling perfectly. It's this truly widespread thing, almost insidious. That internal pressure, it gets amplified by everything around us, work, friends, definitely our screens. That's the core of what we call hustle culture. And from my perspective, looking at the psychology of money, this isn't just about, long hours or demanding jobs. It goes deeper. It's a mindset, really. A belief system that totally warps how we see success, how we value ourselves, and crucially, how we make big financial decisions. So in this deep dive today, we're not just going to define it. We want to unpack the psychology behind it, why it seems so attractive, yet why it's so damaging. And we'll expose the real, sometimes counterintuitive financial costs of always being on. Our goal here is to shed light on that hidden cost, and hopefully help you find a path that's more sustainable, more fulfilling, and actually more prosperous in the long run, a path to real well-being. So let's get into it.
Okay, yeah, that feeling, being driven, but also just completely drained. Almost everyone gets that. But let's try and pin it down. What exactly is hustle culture? I mean, it really feels like an internet thing, doesn't it? It's everywhere online, glorified on social media. You see the memes all the time. Get that bread, sleep is for the weak, rise and grind. It basically pushes this idea that you need to maximize every single working hour, push past your limits, all for, career success, whatever that means. It's not just about your job. It's like your job has to become your entire identity. And resting, that's framed as weakness, a luxury you just can't afford if you want to, quote unquote, win.
You've really nailed a key point there, the psychological appeal. It's incredibly seductive at first because it taps into some really basic human needs, right? It kind of whispers promises of being totally self-sufficient, doing work you're passionate about, finding happiness, and the big one, financial freedom. I mean, who wouldn't want that? It speaks to our desire for control, for agency in our lives. But here's where the reality bites and where the psychology of money really kicks in. That whole concept, like you said, quoting one of our sources, it can feel exhausting just typing the words. This relentless chase, often driven by a deep-seated fear of scarcity, it doesn't usually lead to freedom. Ironically, it often fuels anxiety, pushes people towards depression, serious debt, and this feeling of never being good enough. It's almost a textbook example of how something that seems like a positive motivator wanting success can twist into something really destructive. It preys on our natural desire for security and achievement, but it twists it. It's almost like self-sabotage dressed up as ambition.
And it's not just some, fleeting internet trend we can just brush off. This thinking has seeped into the highest levels. Even someone like Alexis Ohanian, the co-founder of Reddit, a guy who definitely knows about building huge success from scratch, he actually called the hustle craze, quote, one of the most toxic, dangerous things in tech right now, though. And what's really revealing is he admitted his own relentless work ethic, the need to always be on, actually came from his own personal trauma. It was a way to avoid dealing with his own stuff, his own well-being. It really makes you pause and think about the hidden cost behind those shiny success stories we see everywhere, doesn't it? Like, what's the real emotional bill being paid off screen?
That's such a critical point, and Ohanian's insight really shows the psychological trap. This relentless pursuit of money and success, it often happens directly at the expense of our mental health or overall well-being. From a financial psychology angle, it's like a form of maladaptive coping. Work becomes more than just a job, it becomes a shield, a way to avoid uncomfortable feelings, personal issues, maybe even avoid thinking too hard about what we really value. And the influencers pushing this culture, they often leave out a really crucial detail, something our sources highlight again and again. Just working tirelessly, pouring your heart out, it doesn't automatically guarantee financial success or happiness, not even close sometimes. There's this huge gap between sheer effort and the actual results, and the hustle narrative just conveniently ignores that. So when the promised riches or that sense of fulfillment don't show up, what happens? People blame themselves. They feel like failures despite working themselves into the ground, and that just crushes their self-worth and cranks up the financial anxiety.
So, okay, we're pushing ourselves like this, chasing this. It's impossible ideal. What's the actual damage? We might just feel tired, but you mentioned something much deeper, burnout. Can you help us unpack what burnout really is? Maybe where the term even came from. Because it definitely feels like more than just being exhausted.
Oh, absolutely. And getting this distinction is so important for our health, both mental and financial. Burnout is way more than being tired. It was actually first identified as a psychological diagnosis back in 1974 by Herbert Freudenberger. He was working with volunteers at free clinics and noticed they were getting emotionally drained, detached, less effective. He described it as a physical or mental collapse caused by overwork or stress. End quote. The key difference, like you said, is this. Exhaustion means you've hit your limit, you're out of fuel. But burnout means you hit that limit, and then because of all the pressure, internal and external, you kept pushing. You forced yourself to keep going, maybe for days, weeks, even years, long after the tank was empty. Think about trying to run a car with no gas. You'll wreck the engine eventually, right? Our brains and bodies work similarly. This sustained overload leads to chronic stress, deep emotional exhaustion, cynicism about everything, and feeling like you just can't achieve anything anymore.
Wow. So when someone's genuinely burnt out, what does that actually look like day to day?
Yeah.
It sounds incredibly debilitating.
It shows up in some really interesting and often deeply frustrating ways. One example is something people call errand paralysis. This is where, even though you know logically what needs doing, simple tasks on your list, they just feel completely impossible to tackle. Think about this 27-year-old mentioned in one article. He talked about struggling massively with just mailing a voter registration form. Simple, right? He said, "I hate mailing stuff. It gives me anxiety." Logically, it's hardly any work. Fill it out, envelope, mailbox. Done. But for Tim and so many others dealing with burnout, even these tiny tasks become huge mountains because of the anxiety, the sheer lack of energy, and an executive function system that's just overloaded. It's not laziness, not at all. It's like the CEO of your brain, the part responsible for planning, decisions, self-control, is utterly exhausted from dealing with constant stress and no recovery. So even simple instructions from the board, your conscious mind, just don't get executed. And compounding this is that deep guilt many feel about taking any time off, any leisure time at all.
Well, that makes so much sense. I've heard so many stories like that. I remember seeing a comment on Reddit that just perfectly captured it. This person said they felt intensely guilty just watching a TV series or even going on vacation. They genuinely believed they didn't deserve it because they hadn't hit their monthly or yearly goals yet. It's like leisure itself has become something bad, something you have to suffer for first. And if you haven't hustled enough, you're just not worthy of feeling good or resting.
That's such a powerful way to frame it. Everything good is bad, everything bad is good. That internal conflict, it causes real psychological harm. And guess what? It leads to poor financial decisions too. Leisure, which we know is good for us, feels bad because it triggers guilt for not working, not being productive, not earning the rest. And on the flip side, constantly working, even when it's clearly harming your health, feels good, or at least necessary, because it aligns with that ingrained, often external pressure to succeed and be productive all the time. This battle basically messes up your brain's reward system. Healthy things feel wrong. Self-destructive things feel right. It leads to this constant low-level stress, dissatisfaction, and feeling disconnected from what you truly need. And this is often where we see impulsive financial behavior, like stress spending, because people are just desperate for any quick hit of feeling good.
And it's not just internal, is it? It's actively sold to us, especially on social media. You mentioned toxic productivity. Think about the whole that girl trend. You know, the perfectly organized mornings, green juice, journaling, workout, side hustle, all done before 8 a.m., followed by a super productive workday. It's like extreme productivity disguised as self-care. It makes people feel they have to be on and doing something valuable literally all the time. There's no space left for just being still, for resting, for just existing. That's a heavy burden. So how did we even end up here? How did a whole generation start feeling this crushing pressure? I think for millennials, you really have to look at the history. right? The Great Recession in 2008, that left a huge scar. It created a whole cohort of young adults facing real financial insecurity, entering a job market that felt broken. For many, the hustle wasn't a choice based on passion. It was pure necessity, juggling multiple low-paying jobs just to make rent, pay off overwhelming student loans. And then the gig economy exploded, which, okay, promised flexibility, but it also made it super easy to monetize every single spare minute. The lines between work and life just blurred completely. It became a survival tactic.
Yeah.
It's so important to grasp that this generation, in many ways, was trained, tailored, primed, and optimized for the workplace from a very young age in a way previous generations weren't. Malcolm Harris talks about this brilliantly in his book, Kids These Days. He describes how risk management, which used to be a business thing, became a dominant strategy for raising kids. It wasn't just about getting them ready for a job. It was about optimizing their entire childhood, their whole life path, for maximum value in the future job market. You saw things like piano lessons chosen not just for fun, but because they looked good on college applications later. Internships weren't just optional exploration anymore. They became almost mandatory parts of education. The psychological effect of being raised like that is immense. It installs this internal script where your self-worth gets tangled up completely with how productive you are, what you achieve, always striving for that next level that never quite arrives. It's an exhausting performance that starts in childhood.
And social media just pours gasoline on that fire, doesn't it? You're constantly bombarded with images of influencers and entrepreneurs showing off this seemingly effortless success, always traveling, launching new things, looking perfectly calm and financially set. It creates this enormous societal pressure to work harder. Home. Everything feels like a competition, a performance you have to put on. And if you're not visibly winning or looking successful online, you feel like a total failure behind the scenes. That public comparison just makes the private struggle so much worse.
And that pressure, especially when combined with real unavoidable financial stress like student debt or high living costs, it doesn't just cause self-doubt. It actively breeds shame. It reinforces that internal script we talked about. I'm not enough. I'm not doing enough. What's really crucial to understand psychologically is that laziness, the way we usually think about it, like it's some moral failing, it often doesn't really exist as the root cause. Usually when someone seems illogical or unproductive, there's missing context. Maybe it's severe burnout, chronic stress, maybe underlying mental health issues that haven't been addressed. And this burden isn't shared equally. It's particularly relevant for women and for Black people who often face systemic barriers, work longer hours, deal with compounding societal pressures and expectations demanding constant high performance, often for less recognition, less pay, and with little consideration for their mental health. It's a systemic issue rooted in history and bias that manifests as individual suffering and, critically, often locks people into financial insecurity. We frequently see coping mechanisms like stress spending arise here, which unfortunately just makes the financial challenges worse, creating this terrible cycle.
It's a really heavy price, isn't it? Paying with our mental and emotional health. But what if? What if all this relentless effort isn't even delivering on the main promise? The promise of financial success. What if, ironically, it's actually making us poorer? This is where it gets really mind-bending, because we have to question the core belief of hustle culture, that just working harder is the automatic key to getting wealthy. If that were really true, think about it. Nurses, teachers, factory workers, people who pour absolutely everything into their jobs, work incredibly demanding hours, often physically grueling work, they'd be the richest people around. But they're usually not. They're often the ones struggling the most, facing stagnant wages while the cost of everything keeps going up.
That is the absolute heart of what economists and even psychologists call the productivity paradox. And it totally clashes with our gut feeling, right? Our brains are kind of wired to think more effort, more reward. It probably goes way back. Evolutionarily, putting in more physical work directly meant more food, better shelter, more safety. But the modern economy, it's way more complicated. It runs on things like leverage, strategy, networks, intangible value, not just brute force effort. So when that primal reward system in our brain keeps getting frustrated by a system that doesn't reward raw effort proportionally, it creates this deep cognitive dissonance, this frustration. It makes people feel like failures even when they're working incredibly hard. We actually see this in economic data too. Even with huge leaps in technology and yes, often people working more hours around the world, productivity gains haven't always kept pace. Take an international comparison. Germany, highly successful economy, right? They work significantly fewer hours per year on average, about 340, but their output per hour worked is really high, around $47 per person. The U.S., meanwhile, tends to log more hours, but doesn't necessarily get that same level of proportional increase in output or wealth. This really highlights a critical psychological blind spot. We believe that just putting in more time automatically equals more value and more reward, but the data often just doesn't back that up. Think of it like this. You could spend 10 hours digging a ditch with a basic shovel, or you could spend 1 hour using an excavator. Both involve hard work, but the excavator uses technology and strategy to get dramatically more done.
Right. So it's not just about grinding away endlessly. It sounds like the system often rewards strategy much more, leveraging opportunities, using resources effectively, building networks. That seems to count more than just sheer unadulterated effort. Hard work alone, while valuable for sure, it just won't break the cycle for most people if it's not aimed strategically. It's about working smarter, with more intention maybe, rather than just harder and harder hoping something changes.
Exactly. And what's especially insidious, psychologically speaking, is how workplaces can actually exploit this dedication to the hustle. Our efficiency, our willingness to go the extra mile, it hasn't always translated into better jobs, higher pay, better benefits, or more job security. Often it's the opposite. Companies essentially get more output for less investment because this culture normalizes constant work. And employees, they tend to internalize this as a personal failure. I'm just not working hard enough, or I'm not good enough. This then pushes them to take on second jobs, side hustles, work even more unpaid overtime, which just digs them deeper into exploitation and financial stress instead of actually improving their situation. It's this vicious loop where your own psychological commitment gets turned against you, worsening your financial anxiety instead of building stability. And the danger is it shifts the blame from systemic problems like company policies or economic structures onto the individual, which just eats away at self-worth and can lead to feeling helpless.
And you see this playing out in really concrete ways for business owners too, based on our sources. It's actually quite heartbreaking. Entrepreneurs caught in this hustle trap end up making decisions that actively harmed their bottom line, like maybe accepting really unfavorable payment terms like 60 days from big clients because they're just too burnt out to negotiate properly. That cripples their cash flow. Or they miss out on huge government contracts because they just don't have the mental bandwidth to deal with complex applications before the deadline. Big opportunities lost. Even things like impulsively buying expensive equipment that feels like a quick fix instead of maybe leasing it to save cash because they're too rushed to think it through properly. And maybe the biggest irony, they miss major market shifts, a new customer base, a potential partnership, a technology change, because they're so stuck deep in the weeds of just doing the daily grind. They're too busy being busy to see the bigger strategic picture. Their constant activity actually prevents real growth and building sustainable wealth. Hashtag 2.2, the direct financial and mental health costs.
Now, let's zoom right in on that link between financial stress and mental health. It's profound, often tragic, and undeniable. This isn't just a casual link. It's backed by solid research, and it hits young adults particularly hard. Money worries consistently top the list of stressors for people in their 20s, and it's not surprising, really. You've got rising living costs, wages that aren't keeping up, and often really significant student loan debt casting this long shadow. Just to give you a sense, the median student loan debt for 25 to 29-year-olds was around $16,000 back in 2022. For 30 to 34-year-olds, it was up to $20,000. These aren't just numbers. They represent a huge psychological weight, feeling trapped, feeling like your choices are limited, seeing a future that feels constantly out of grasp. All of that directly hammers your mental well-being. Financial psychology shows us very clearly. A mind that's constantly worried about scarcity just cannot operate optimally. It's stuck in a low-level fight-or-flight mode, which makes rational, long-term financial planning incredibly difficult.
And it's not just about the practical side of paying bills, is it? These money worries, they dig much deeper. They trigger profound shame and self-doubt, which then makes any existing mental health struggles even worse. Studies consistently show this direct connection between stressing about managing money right now and increased rates of burnout, lower job satisfaction, even serious depression. And there's this real spillover effect. What starts as a financial problem quickly bleeds into your work performance, your relationships, even your physical health, and your fundamental sense of self-worth. It really attacks your well-being from all sides.
And what's truly dangerous, something I unfortunately see quite often in my work, is that this intense financial stress often pushes people towards unhealthy coping mechanisms, almost like self-medicating. When the pressure from debt, from the cost of living, from that constant hustle demand just feels unbearable, people might turn to things like drinking more, gambling, getting lost in video games for hours, or compulsive shopping. Anything for a temporary escape, a distraction, or just to feel something good for a moment. But the cruel irony is these behaviors almost always lead to more spending, more debt. They make the original financial problem much, much worse, trapping people in this awful downward spiral. Psychologically, these are often desperate attempts to grab back a tiny bit of control or experience a fleeting moment of pleasure or just numb the emotional pain. But they end up fueling the very fire they're meant to put out, deepening that sense of hopelessness and locking in the cycle of debt and despair.
Yeah, and it can escalate to a truly terrifying place. Difficulty repaying debts or just having a large number of different debts, these things are consistently linked to a significantly higher risk of depression and even suicidal thoughts. It creates this feeling of uninterrupted hopelessness, this crushing weight of shame. People feel trapped, alone, like they don't deserve help, and they start to see their financial struggles as a sign of deep personal failure. This is the devastating, often hidden human cost of a system that ties our self-worth so tightly to financial success and then demands this unsustainable level of hustle just to stay afloat. It's a silent crisis we really need to talk more about.
Maybe it helps to step back even further historically and think about where our intense work ethic even came from. Understanding this shift is really key to seeing why we're in this mess now. Max Weber, the sociologist, famously wrote about the Protestant ethic. He described a time when hard work wasn't just about earning money. It was seen as a calling Beruf in German. It was a way to express virtue, to show proficiency, maybe even fulfill a divine purpose. It was about demonstrating your moral character through your labor. Think about Benjamin Franklin's famous line, "Remember that time is money." It comes from that era, but it wasn't just about profit. It had this moral, almost spiritual weight behind it. In that view, work had this deep meaning, an anchor beyond just the paycheck. It connected your daily efforts to something bigger than yourself, giving it a sense of honor.
It's really wild how different that relationship with work sounds compared to today. It almost feels like a different planet. There's this amazing historical detail sometimes. Back then, if you actually raised the pay rate for workers doing piecework, they didn't work more hours to earn more money. Often they did the opposite. They worked less because they could earn their usual or customary wage faster, and then they just stopped. They chose to have more free time, time for community, rather than just keep accumulating more wealth. Can you imagine that today? Choosing leisure over more money, it seems almost unthinkable in our current culture.
And that's exactly where the modern shift becomes so stark and honestly so psychologically damaging. The religious or deep moral foundation of that intense work ethic, it's largely died away, as Weber predicted. So what's left in our society today is this purely utilitarian drive for profit and productivity, but it's been stripped of that grounding context, that moral or spiritual meaning. The modern man, as Weber put it, often struggles to connect with those deeper ideas or give them real significance. Psychologically, this leaves a huge void. When work doesn't have that sense of a higher purpose, that feeling of a calling, it can easily become just a joyless, meaningless grind. It can leave people feeling empty, cynical, ultimately unfulfilled no matter how hard they work or how much money they make. Chasing wealth without a deeper why becomes an empty pursuit. It can't provide genuine satisfaction. It's like climbing and climbing only to realize your ladder was leaning against the wrong building the whole time.
It always makes you feel a bit nostalgic for parts of the past, doesn't it? Like, think about the old putting out system. Before factories took over everything, business hours were often quite moderate. People earned enough for what was considered a respectable life. And crucially, there was actually time for leisure, for family, for being involved in your community. It's such a sharp contrast to today's relentless push to maximize every single second, where success often means sacrificing exactly those things: community, rest, family time, personal well-being that actually make life feel respectable and enjoyable. It feels like we've lost something really valuable in that trade-off.
Okay, so given everything we've talked about, the real costs of hustle culture, mentally, physically, financially, the absolute first step to getting your life back and building wealth that actually lasts, it has to be a fundamental shift in your mindset. We have to remember, burnout isn't just being tired for a bit. It's more like a chronic disease. You can't just sleep it off over a weekend. And the first step in treating any chronic issue is acknowledging it's real, understanding where it comes from. Instead of beating yourself up or seeing it as some kind of personal failing, it means accepting that how you feel isn't a sign of weakness. It's a pretty predictable result of running on empty for too long without realizing it. That self-compassion, that understanding, it's vital. It's the psychological groundwork you need before you can start healing and making healthier financial choices.
Absolutely. And from that place of self-acceptance, it's about actively practicing self-care. And I really mean actively. This isn't some fluffy extra you do if you have time. You have to make it a non-negotiable priority. Schedule it in, even if it feels weird or selfish at first. Maybe it's carving out 30 minutes to read a novel. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's just going for a walk without your phone, or having a proper unplugged conversation with a friend. And maybe the most important piece, just try to be kind to yourself. Celebrate the small wins, seriously, no matter how small they seem. Did you finally mail that form you were dreading? Awesome. Acknowledge it, and consciously, actively, try to stop comparing your own progress, your own messy reality, to other people's carefully curated highlight reels on social media. Your journey is yours alone. Their feed isn't the full story.
That's fantastic advice. And here's a really powerful mental tool to fight back against that scarcity mindset that fuels the hustle. Actively try to cultivate and embrace a there is enough mindset. This directly challenges that deep-seated belief hammered into us by advertising and social comparison that we always need more stuff, more achievements, more everything. I often suggest people try using a mantra, something like, there is always enough, I am enough. Say it to yourself. Even if it feels totally untrue at first, even if your logical brain argues back, repeating it can slowly start to loosen the grip of that fear, that anxiety, that constant internal pressure to strive. It's about retraining your subconscious mind to operate from a place of recognizing abundance and feeling gratitude for what you do have, instead of always focusing on lack and chasing the next thing. That shift is fundamental to healthy financial psychology. It lets you actually value what's already good in your life.
This also connects to ideas like quiet quitting, which gets such a bad rap in the media sometimes, right? It gets sensationalized. But really, it's often not about slacking off or being disengaged out of spite. It's more about a strategic and actually really healthy decision to set healthy boundaries between work and the rest of your life. It means doing your job well, being responsible during your paid hours. And then this is the key part, stopping. Clocking off mentally as well as physically, respecting your own time and energy. And the interesting thing is, this approach, it can actually make you happier, improve your overall well-being, and potentially even make you more productive when you are working, because you're not constantly running on fumes. You're more focused, more refreshed. It can be a win-win, despite what the hustle gurus claim.
Exactly. And this points directly to another absolutely critical psychological step for finding long-term fulfillment and financial peace. You have to redefine what success means for you. Not what society dictates, not what your parents hope for, not what looks good on Instagram. You. Ask yourself honestly, is success having more quality time with people you love? Is it the freedom to actually rest without feeling guilty? Is it pursuing hobbies just for fun without needing to monetize them? Or is it finding real joy and purpose in the work you choose, even if it's not the highest paying option? Take some real time, maybe even write it down. What does success look like and feel like for you? Getting clear on this gives you an internal compass, a personal North Star. It helps you guide your choices so your actions actually line up with your deepest values, instead of just blindly chasing external validation or someone else's definition of a good life. When your idea of success comes from within, when it's intrinsically motivating, it's much more sustainable, much more fulfilling, and way less tied to those often fleeting external measures like just money or status.
And it's encouraging that this isn't just something individuals have to figure out alone, which can feel overwhelming. There seems to be a bit of a collective shift happening. We're seeing younger generations, like Gen Z, entering the workforce, being much more upfront, much more assertive about setting boundaries and prioritizing their well-being. They grew up seeing the consequences of the nonstop hustle, maybe, and they have different expectations. They're not as afraid to challenge the old ways, and that's actually having a positive knock-on effect. It's influencing millennials, even older workers, to rethink their own attitudes towards careers and find a healthier balance. It's really good to see these conversations becoming more normal. Hashtag 3.2. Practical steps for financial well-being in your 20s and beyond. Okay, so we've talked about the crucial mindset shifts, the foundation, but now let's get really practical. What are the actionable, concrete things you can start doing right now to build real, sustainable wealth and dodge those common money traps that hustle culture just makes worse? This is about empowering steps you can take starting today.
Right, the practical side. The very first, and maybe the most fundamental step here, is to know your financial personality. And I don't mean just a quick quiz online. Those can be a start. It means really dedicating time to understanding your deep down relationship with money. How do you feel about debt? Is it terrifying? A tool? A source of shame? What's your personal money value system? What matters most to you? Security, freedom, generosity, status? And what are your default spending habits? Are you naturally a saver, a spender, someone who just avoids looking at their bank balance altogether? Does money make you anxious, feel secure, or is it just a way to have experiences? Nailing down these psychological drivers, your biases, your go-to behaviors, this early identification is so crucial. It helps you prevent bad decisions later because you can work with your natural tendencies, not constantly fight against them. It's like getting a clear map of your own internal financial world so you can navigate it better.
Okay, building right on that self-awareness, the next step is to set clear, meaningful financial goals. This isn't just wishful thinking. It gives you real purpose and direction, something concrete and motivating to aim for. Think about setting specific goals in different time frames. Short term, maybe building a small cushion in your checking account, finally paying off that annoying little credit card balance, or saving up for a weekend trip you really need. Then medium-term goals, like building up a solid emergency fund, say 3 to 6 months of essential expenses. Or maybe getting more aggressive about paying down student loans or saving for a down payment on a car. And then the big ones, the long-term goals. Often things like owning a home someday, or maybe just consistently investing for what you define as financial freedom, that point where your money starts working for you, giving you choices. These goals aren't just numbers. They represent real steps towards feeling more secure, more accomplished, more in control of your life. And that's incredibly rewarding psychologically. It cuts down financial stress hugely.
And to actually hit those goals, you absolutely positively have to master budgeting and tracking. Now, I know budget can sound like a scary, restrictive word, but it's not about deprivation. It's really about empowerment. It's about awareness and control. A really great place to start, one I often suggest, is the 50-30-20 rule. It's simple. Roughly 50% of your take-home pay goes to true necessities, rent or mortgage, utilities, groceries, essential transportation. Then 30% is for discretionary spending, the fun stuff, things you want but don't strictly need, like eating out, entertainment, hobbies. And the final, crucial 20% goes towards savings or paying down debt. There are tons of great tools to make this easy now. Budgeting apps like Mint or YNAB, You Need a Budget, or even just setting up a simple spreadsheet can make tracking straightforward and honestly kind of satisfying once you get into it. This conscious management, just knowing where your money is going, it's truly the foundation of financial success. It breaks that stressful cycle of living paycheck to paycheck, wondering where it all went. Psychologically, having a budget actually gives you permission to spend within those limits, which reduces guilt and anxiety around money because you've made deliberate choices.
Absolutely. And a really critical piece of that foundation, something people often ignore until disaster strikes, is to build and automate an emergency fund. This means having a separate savings account, one that's easy to access but not too easy, specifically for emergencies. The goal should be to eventually have at least 3 to 6 months worth of your essential living expenses saved up. This fund is your safety net. It's the buffer that stops you from having to rely on high-interest credit cards or loans when life throws you a curveball, a job loss, a big car repair bill, an unexpected medical expense. It happens to everyone. And the absolute key to making this happen consistently, automate it. Set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to your emergency fund every time you get paid, even if it's just a small amount to start. This takes the decision-making, the psychological friction, out of saving. It just happens in the background, steadily building your safety net without you having to constantly think about it or rely on willpower.
Then we get to strategic debt management. This is a huge source of stress for so many young adults. The general rule is definitely to prioritize paying off high-interest debt first. We're talking credit cards, personal loans, those awful payday loans, anything with a really high interest rate. These drain your money the fastest and carry the biggest psychological weight. You can use strategies like the avalanche method, tackling the debt with the highest interest rate first, or the snowball method, paying off the smallest balance first to get quick wins and build momentum. Both work. It depends on your personality. However, it's also important to have a more nuanced strategic view, especially when it comes to student loans. Paying them off early feels great, right? Like a huge accomplishment. But consider this. If your student loan interest rate is relatively low, say 5%, and you could potentially invest extra money in a diversified way that might historically return, say, 7% or 8% over the long term, is aggressively paying off that 5% loan always the mathematically best move? Maybe not. You might be losing out on significant potential wealth growth from compounding over time. It requires shifting your mindset from thinking all debt is automatically bad to understanding that sometimes lower interest debt or good debt can potentially be leveraged for greater financial gain. It's a calculated risk, of course. It depends on your risk tolerance, the emotional burden of that specific debt for you. It's not a simple black and white answer.
That leads perfectly into what feels like a really empowering, almost magical step. Invest consistently and early. Honestly, one of the most impactful financial moves you can possibly make in your 20s is to start investing even a small amount from your very first paycheck. And then just keep doing it. consistently. And maybe try reframing it. Instead of the somewhat uninspiring idea of saving for retirement, which feels ages away, think of it as investing for financial freedom. Designing a future where you have options, control, choices. Definitely take full advantage of any employer-matched 401k contributions if you have access to them. That is literally free money for your future self. Don't leave it on the table. Also, look into health savings accounts, HSAs, if you have a high-deductible health plan. They have amazing triple tax advantages. Money goes in tax-free, grows tax-free, and comes out tax-free for qualified medical expenses. Plus, you can often invest the funds for long-term growth. The power of compounding interest when you start early is just incredible. It's not an exaggeration, a hypothetical example. Investing $10,000 a year for just 15 years, starting when you're 25, could potentially grow to over $1 million by the time you're 65, thanks to time and consistent market growth. It's not about being an investment genius. It's about discipline and starting as soon as you can.
And building on that, as a direct counter to that hustle till you drop for low-wage gigs mentality is strategic upskilling and career optimization. Instead of just scrambling to juggle multiple low-paying side jobs out of desperation, which usually just leads to burnout and doesn't move the needle much financially, focus your energy on optimizing your main source of income. This means actively developing skills that are in high demand so you can confidently negotiate better salaries in your current job. Or strategically planning moves to companies or industries that pay better for similar work. Or proactively upskilling in really valuable areas, think data analysis, project management, digital marketing, learning how to leverage AI tools effectively. These specific marketable skills offer a much, much better return on your investment of time and effort than generic training or grinding away at exhausting side hustles that don't really build long-term career capital. Keep your resume sharp, network intentionally, and actively position yourself for real career advancement. This is a huge psychological shift from just working more to working smarter and deliberately increasing your value in the job market.
Yes. And that connects beautifully to the next point. Practice delayed gratification. In our world of instant everything, where almost any desire is just a click away, being able to delay gratification is like a superpower. It means being intentional with your spending. Before you make that impulse purchase, just pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself honestly, does this really align with my bigger financial goals? Or is it just a fleeting want? Prioritize those long-term benefits, achieving financial freedom, saving for that down payment, funding that dream trip over the immediate, often temporary, satisfaction of buying something right now. This isn't about depriving yourself of all joy. It's about making conscious, deliberate choices that serve your larger vision for your life. It stops that mindless lifestyle creep or leisure spending from accidentally derailing your progress towards what you truly want. It's a powerful act of self-discipline that pays off massively over time.
And for anyone navigating more complex situations or maybe just feeling completely overwhelmed by all this, please remember to seek professional guidance. Talking to a qualified financial advisor, especially one who gets the psychological side of money, can be incredibly helpful. They can help you build a personalized financial plan that considers not just your income and expenses, but also, really importantly, your tolerance for risk, your specific life stage, and your unique personal goals and values. Having that expert, objective guidance can be invaluable for navigating life's unexpected twists and turns, things you just can't plan for. And they can help you set realistic, age-appropriate milestones, like aiming to have saved roughly 1x your annual income by age 30, maybe 3x by 40, and so on, keeping you on track. From a psychological standpoint, working with an advisor can significantly reduce anxiety. It provides structure, makes complex decisions feel more manageable, and gives you confidence and clarity moving forward.
And finally, for many people, especially those thinking about building wealth over the very long term, consider homeownership. If owning your own place and building equity is part of your dream, part of your long-term plan, then start planning for it deliberately. This usually means making some conscious budget sacrifices now to save for a down payment and related costs. A common guideline is to aim for your total housing costs, meaning your mortgage payment, property taxes, and homeowner's insurance, combined to be no more than about 30% of your gross monthly income. Building equity through owning a home has historically been a key wealth-building strategy for many families. It can provide stability, act as a hedge against rising rents and inflation, and build a significant asset over time. It's definitely not the right choice for everyone or at every point in life, but it's a powerful financial tool to consider when approached thoughtfully and strategically. #outro. Wow. Okay, that was a really, really insightful deep dive. We've kind of pulled back the curtain on hustle culture, exposed the deceptive promises and the very real deep costs to our mental health, our well-being, and yeah, ironically, even to our actual financial progress. But more importantly, I think we've mapped out a much more empowering path forward. A shift towards living intentionally, managing finances strategically. It's not about just working endlessly harder. It's about working smarter and really prioritizing building a life that genuinely serves you, a life that feels aligned with what truly matters to you.
And that's exactly where understanding the psychology of money becomes so powerful, because it offers real, practical, accessible solutions that anyone can use to take back control of their finances. These aren't incredibly complex or overwhelming things we talked about. They're mostly simple, consistent steps that, when you really embrace them, can genuinely transform your life. Remember, just understanding your own unique relationship with money, setting clear goals that reflect your values, making intentional choices day by day, that changes so much more than just your bank balance. It lowers your stress. It can improve your relationships. It can fundamentally shift your sense of purpose and peace. It's about building a richer life in every possible sense of that word.
We really hope this deep dive has connected with you. That maybe you feel a bit more heard, more understood, and definitely more empowered now. We want to invite you, just as you're listening now, take a moment. Reflect on your own life. What does enough actually mean to you? What's one boundary you could maybe start setting this week? Or what's one small financial step you could take to begin building a life you truly love, instead of one you just feel like you have to endure? Please share this deep dive if you know someone who needs to hear this message. And join our community. We want to keep exploring these crucial conversations, helping each other build lives filled with purpose and financial well-being.
And as you go about the rest of your day, I just want to leave you with this one final thought to chew on, to carry with you. Is the work you're doing, the effort you're putting in right now, truly building a life you love? Or is it mostly just keeping you busy? The choice, ultimately, is always yours. Choose the path that prioritizes your whole well-being over that relentless and often deeply unrewarding grind. We'll talk to you next time.